You are watching The Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, your escape to reality.
Hey everyone, welcome to this week's live stream of The Skeptic's Guide to the Universe. We're all here except maybe Kara. Kara is having internet access problems. She apparently doesn't have any internet access, that is.
That's a problem.
Yeah, that is a problem. So, you know, who knows if she'll be able to join us or not.
Now she knows what 1989 was like. Oh, well, she was alive then. You got the point.
Right. So it's been another week of coronavirus, pandemic, lockdown. Numbers keep going up. We're clearly not past the peak yet.
What's the total number, Steve?
So worldwide, let me pull it up. So the U.S. passed 70,000 deaths. Go to my usual website. Worldwide, we just broke 4 million cases.
Yep.
Wow.
275,000 deaths. So the I think the big thing over the last week, we had about 1 million questions about the Plandemic movie. In fact, the comments are already, people are asking us about it in the comments. So I wrote a blog about it.
Yes, you did.
Like to hit it go.
So
we'll post it in chat too, the link.
Yeah, David Gorski also wrote one on respectful insolence, which is David tends to take a much longer format than I do.
You gave a nice history there, though. It's like some good historical context.
Yeah. He goes into a lot more background history context. But the bottom line is that the Judy Mikovits, the doctor that it's about, she's basically a crank at this point. So apparently she started out her career legitimate, and was a molecular biologist. But it took a huge turn in 2009 when she published a study in Science. So she had this theory that perhaps some chronic illnesses, specifically chronic fatigue syndrome, were due to viral infections, and she thought that this was good, that these viral infections, like these retroviruses or other viruses, were getting into the population through vaccines, right? But her first study didn't involve vaccines. She just said she published a study in which she linked clinically chronic fatigue syndrome and a specific virus, the XMRV virus. And that was big news at the time. I remember we wrote about it at the time on Science-Based Medicine. It was like, okay, this is interesting. I'm kind of skeptical of chronic fatigue syndrome as a clinical entity in and of itself because it's vague. But like, sure, some people with chronic fatigue may have this virus. We know that some people with chronic fatigue have other viruses like cytomegalovirus or Epstein-Barr virus or whatever. So sure, we could add this to the list of chronic, viral infections that may be causing something that gets diagnosed as chronic fatigue syndrome. But the research just didn't pan out. So the first hint of trouble was that other labs were having difficulty replicating her findings. And so, of course, they're always like, well, you're not doing it right. You're not using the right technique, blah, blah, blah. But like nobody could replicate the findings, including other people at her own lab. And then it was discovered that her cell lines that she was using was contaminated with that virus.
Yep.
And that she just was not using proper control. So she didn't properly control for the possibility of contamination.
Yeah.
So the science that, who published her original study retracted the study, like fully retracted it. Mm-hmm. So that was bad, right? That was pretty scientifically humiliating. That was supposed to be her big signature, evidence for her larger claim of these, viruses causing all these chronic human illnesses, and it completely crashed and burned. Now, that's always the big test, in my opinion, of a scientist's intellectual integrity, their fortitude, their real dedication to science. When you have a big fail like that, do you pick yourself up, dust yourself off, admit error, make corrections, move on?
No,
Or do you double down? Do you say, nope, I'm going to stick with my original findings and defend it any way I can? Guess which path she chose.
Yep.
So she decided that her failure to demonstrate her core claim was due to a conspiracy against her. And and I don't know how much of this was in her thinking beforehand. I think there was a lot there. But clearly she showed her cards at that point. So now she's at the point where she has this massive conspiracy narrative. It's merged with the anti-vaccine conspiracy narrative, and now has merged with the COVID-19 conspiracy narrative and the alt-right, anti-deep state conspiracy narratives into this one big, blob of conspiracy that the entire medical establishment is all about creating disease, and it's all for profit, and all vaccines are about making profit, and Fauci is evil and ruined her career, and she's just this brave maverick who's been silenced by the system, blah, blah, blah. It's all nonsense. So that's the sort of the core of it. And then she makes a lot of specific claims, all stupid and wrong, in that video, in that interview. So she's pushing hydroxychloroquine with terrible evidence. Hydroxychloroquine probably does not work for COVID-19. And she says not only does it work, like it would basically cure this pandemic, but the powers that be want as many people to get infected as possible so they could make money off of an eventual vaccine. That's her narrative. That's crazy town. That is crazy, crazy town.
Yeah, and also, the powers that be, one of the most, if not the most single powerful person in the United States, President Trump, is backing it.
Yeah.
So what do you mean the powers that be?
Well, the medical powers that be, Fauci, right? So then she goes after Fauci. Like she names names in her book and all that stuff. And her book was written with Kent Heckenlively. That's a big red flag because he's a notorious anti-vaccine crank himself.
Forward by Robert F. Kennedy.
Yeah, RFK is
give me a break.
Also an anti-vaccine conspiracy theorist. So that's the waters in which she's swimming. She showed the video of those two Bakersfield doctors. I mean, in the interview with her in that promo for it, saying that, oh, if you're stuck at home, your immune system is going to tank because you're not getting exposed to pathogens. Yeah, because our homes are pathogen free. Right.
Yeah,
That's
right.
You got it. Like just making shit up all along. Then the interview is mostly just pure conspiracy speculation. Now she's just taking every contrarian position. Everything is going through the filter of she's the victim of a big conspiracy. The entire medical establishment is just out to make money by making people sick. They're keeping those natural cures from people to keep them sick. It's all just ridiculous nonsense.
This is a lot of the topics we've talked about before, but it seems to have all kind of converged into this one particular case.
Yeah.
And just so
Well, it's
many
what we call
different things we've talked
it's
about.
crank magnetism, right?
Yeah.
It's like if you are following a flawed process, intellectually, scientifically, then yeah, you're going to come to a whole bunch of wrong conclusions, right? Because your process is flawed.
Okay.
So that seems to be what we're dealing with here.
I don't know, Steve. Her process might be flawed. She knows what the hell she's doing. She knows exactly what she's doing.
You don't know what she thinks, Jay. You don't. You just don't know.
Come on. She built the narrative. I mean, how do you go from being a scientist to being a total crank like that? I mean,
you're wrong. You can be a scientist who is technically competent. You can go through the motions. You can have lab skills, right? As far as I could tell, she participated in research, but when she had the reins and was leading the hypotheses, she crashed into a wall, right? So she's probably a technically competent laboratory technician scientist, but as an explorer, as a thinker, she's a disaster. That's what we're seeing. Those two things are not incompatible. You can't say that she knows what she's doing because she was a lab monkey, back in the day.
Would you allow me to call her an asshole? How about that? Is that better?
That's subjective. That's hyperbole. So yeah, that's personal opinion. You could say that all you want.
All right. So I see your point, but I also feel like, it seems like she turned up the insanity.
Oh yeah.
From a very low setting to a very high setting. This documentary also, just an odd coincidence that her book came out right when the documentary came out. I think, in my opinion, she is doing this to cover her ass and to make money.
Well, it's always more complicated than that. So first of all, everybody tries to make money on what they do, right? So we try to we have a book. We're making money on what we're doing. That's not a reason to dismiss
doesn't need to know.
what somebody is saying. I just mean, what I'm saying. No one's getting rich doing this, but somebody could point to say, "Oh, these guys have a book and they have patrons and blah blah blah, whatever." Yeah. It's whatever. That's just
say there's a financial agenda.
That doesn't fly.
Steve,
it doesn't fly. The fact that she has a couple of books
out. We're not lying to people. We are not.
But that's a separate issue. That's a separate point. It's independent of the fact that that we have books out. The other thing is that once you go down the road, it's like the dark side, right? Once you go down the road of the dark side, forever it will control your destiny.
Damn right.
It's the same exact thing. Once you say, all right, this crashed and burned flawed hypothesis that I had was correct, and I'm going to double down on it by saying that I'm the victim of a conspiracy, that feeds upon itself. Because then you have to defend the conspiracy with more conspiracy, right? That's why the grand conspiracies grow out of control, because you constantly have to defend it by broadening it, by deepening it, until at the end of the day, it's all one giant conspiracy, and you can't believe anything. And then you're part of this maverick army of light trying to expose the historic, epic, biblical level fraud. Right, that must be going on in order for you to maintain your conspiracy. So I think, and you have these other groups who are like, yes, there is a conspiracy about this, and then you incorporate that, right, whatever. And all the conspiracies sort of glom onto each other because they're all trying to do the same thing at baseline, which is discredit the man, discredit the powers that be, the mainstream, the establishment, the media, whatever. It's all got to go. It's all flawed. It's all bought and paid for. So that's where she is now, but that process, we don't know how much insight she has into that process, whether she's just logically screwed, or versus a con artist. They're always somewhere in between, you know, where they're doing pious fraud or they're cutting corners, or they may be in the back of their head, they know they're intellectually not totally solid, but they believe in the big lie that's driving the whole thing.
Sure, and they find a community that backs them up, stokes the fires, helps, you know, kind of push the agenda.
So
and
she's now
their belief system.
She's basically a darling of the anti-vaccine movement. So within that world, she's a celebrity. She's a hero. Within mainstream science world, she's a loser, a failed scientist, and a crank. Which would you rather be, right? The failed crank or the brave hero fighting against dark forces? So that's the world she's living in, right? That's the fantasy world that she's descended into. But it's, you know, it can be a compelling narrative if you know nothing about the whole thing, right? If you know nothing about the anti-vaccine movement and how medicine works and how research works and blah, blah, blah. You know, if you're just an average, you know, person cruising the internet. And we also know, we can always tell, you know, those of us who write for science-based medicine or, you know, for my blog, when we hit upon a topic for which there is a conspiracy subculture, because they come out of the woodwork. You know, suddenly you have hundreds of comments on your blog that are just insane, right? That are like with this really hardcore conspiracy narrative. David was a victim of a DDoS attack this morning. Not a coincidence. They're really nasty, really, really nasty. You know, because if you think you're fighting Darth Vader, you know, the evil empire, then pretty much, and you're kind of a crank to begin with, pretty much anything is justified at that point. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know, I also think that we shouldn't be afraid to be angry about stuff like this. You know, it's good to
but don't let it color your thinking, though.
Yeah, of course, but you know, the anger can fuel, you know, some activism. I think it's important for people, for us as the skeptical community, to post on people's social media pages in response to this, because there's a lot of people. You know, this is a great example of, or a microcosm of what can misinformation do. Let's look at it that way real quick. So this video comes out, and on the surface, it looks legitimate. And all of these people on social media and emailing us and everything are asking like some legitimate questions. Wow, guys, what do you think about this? This is really concerning. You know, that was my question when I first saw it. I didn't know who she was, and I had to do research and talk to people, you know, talk to my inner circle of people that we all are sharing information. And, you know, we get to the point where you realize, okay, this is bad news, right? But the problem is you have a lot of these fence sitters or shruggies and, you know, people that don't really have enough information to draw a line in the sand.
Yeah.
And which way are they going to tip? And it's up to us, the skeptical community, to make sure that we jump on it quick before they drink even a little taste of the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, but here's the problem.
Let them tip into the dark side.
But if you let your anger show, they use that to discredit you. That's the problem. And even if
don't
you
show
don't,
the anger
even
on
if
the
you're
internet,
even if you're pristine,
to fuel you. Yeah.
Even if you're pristine, like, you know, I write my article totally. I thought it was dry, but I don't pull my punches. But, you know, and then the people say, "Oh, the forces are being unleashed against, you know, Dr. Mikovits." You know,
unleash the hounds. Release the hounds.
that just proves that she's right. You know, oh, this guy from Yale, then they like tie me to Yale as if like institutionally. It's like, no,
ivory tower academic novella.
I know, but what do they?
What happened to work at Yale?
This happens all the time. I was like just talking to someone online about this professor at Stanford University was writing about COVID-19 and was completely wrong. Okay.
Yeah.
He's like, Stanford University said, I'm like, no.
This
Stanford
one guy who happens to work at Stanford. Yeah.
And what do you think it means if you say Stanford University makes a statement and draws a line in this? You think that they're like, you know, all the mages are coming in from all the different ivory towers and having a circle and they discuss things for a month and make a decision? No, I mean, even if it did come from Stanford University, it's probably coming from the desk of one or two people tops. It's not like this big scientific consensus. You know, they make such a big deal out of like, this came from Stanford or from Yale. I could give a shit if a study comes from Yale. I want to know who did it. Who are the people involved? What process did they use and what their results are? You know, every institution is liable to make a mistake or publish wrong information at some point. Some are better than others, but it's meaningless to me. I want everyone to realize that every piece of information that's critical needs to be verified.
I'll tell you what, anytime I now see something coming from the Cleveland Clinic, I have to, really pay attention kind of to what they're saying, because who knows what you might find mixed in there. But so it works the other way.
Evan, even if you like an online blog or newspaper or whatever, one author to the next, the quality of the article and the information could be an A+ and an F-. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like that's the point. You can't take it like Stanford University or Yale said this. It's so much, the information itself is.
It's just sloppy thinking. It's not distinguishing where the information is actually coming from.
Right.
But good, if you're a conspiracy theorist, like the world is a black box to you, right? They're just the powers that be. They don't drill down to know that, like, all right, I'm a physician who works at Yale. I'm a faculty member, but I don't speak for Yale. No one at Yale is telling me what to say or not to say. They don't even understand things like academic freedom. To them, it's just the powers that be. And if you're attached to any, they just assume I'm working for big pharma and big medicine and, blah, blah, blah. It's all just this mishmash of powerful entities working behind the scenes to control things. It's very childlike thinking. It's very black box thinking. And don't confuse them with all the nuance. Go ahead,
Steve, are
Bob.
you invoking the whole general sort of mishmash?
The whole general sort of mishmash. Yeah, absolutely.
You don't want to go down that road.
Yeah.
This video really pissed me off, though. I mean, I can't. That's what I guess my point.
Yeah, I got pissed off too, but you just can't.
There's more coming.
Oh yeah.
This only surfaced its head.
I feel like, battle lines have been officially drawn with those that are anti-establishment, academia, anti-science, and those that are not.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as I try to understand why they feel the way that they do and where they're coming from, I'm also like, that mentality is dangerous. It's dangerous thinking. It's very polarized thinking, and it's the exact type of thinking that we don't want to happen during a pandemic.
Yeah.
Our scientists need to be respected, and we need to trust what the scientific community in all their different spheres, we have to trust the correct scientists in this instance, right? So Steve, who are the correct scientists to be listening to during a pandemic?
Well, listen, like the premise is a little flawed. It's not like there's any individual scientist who I would say has any authority. What you want to listen to is the consensus of expert opinion, right? Mm-hmm. You always want to listen to as many different scientists as possible. So first, the scientists individually and the organizations need to be the proper ones. So I'm not going to listen to some guy who owns a clinic, an acute care clinic, versus an epidemiologist, right?
Right.
So it's the epidemiologists and epidemiological organizations like the Center for Disease Control. Those are going to have the greatest level of expertise to bring to bear on this. And also, you do develop a sense, a way of evaluating the credibility of the information that you're getting. If people are saying they're like appropriately discussing the limits of the knowledge and the caveats, like this is preliminary data, this is what we know so far, right? If they're making sweeping statements based upon little data, that gets less and less credible, right? Again, the more you have to invoke some kind of mysterious dark conspiracy in order to explain away, the evidence that disagree with you or people who disagree with you, that's a red flag as well. It's unfortunately there's no like one quickie shortcut. It's kind of like the whole skeptical, critical thinking package, scientific literacy package needs to come into play to some extent. And the thing you have to realize, and this is the worst thing in this whole situation, is that again, there are those who are, for ideological and other reasons, are deliberately watering down expertise, the concept of expertise, the ability to rely upon experts. They put out fake shit just so people throw up their hands and go, well, who can you believe? I have experts over here saying A, other experts saying B. who knows who you can believe. That's the end goal. That was
it's
the
like
goal to begin with.
Like relativism almost takes hold.
Yeah, it's like you're right.
dangerous.
You don't know what to believe. The facts are irrelevant. Experts are irrelevant. So let's just go with your emotions.
I'll believe my facts. You believe your facts.
Yeah.
And
They
Steve,
want you to believe your emotions because they can manipulate your emotions.
that's a huge chunk of skepticism right there.
Yeah.
How do you evaluate and assess evidence? Without that ability, you're just flailing in the wind. That's something that every skeptic needs to be an expert.
Yeah, right. But that's what I'm getting at,
It's
Bob.
so critical, and it's reflex now. You could look at a website or an announcement, and you could know very quickly, like, that is very most likely a piece of shit, and I can't trust that. It's sometimes it doesn't take much, but sometimes you got to get into the weeds a little bit. But that's such a critical skill.
Yeah, but the red flags are actually highly predictive. They are highly predictive.
Right. Yes.
So you develop those red flags for questionable source or for pseudoscience, and we've written many articles about it. You could well documented in our book, for example. And if you start popping up a lot of those red flags, and that is highly predictive if this is not a reliable source. So that's the best you could do in terms of a shorthand.
Well, that's what we need. I mean, the heuristic is an important thing to keep in mind here, because we want people to be able to easily at least throw up those flags without having to feel like there's this huge thing that they have to do whenever they want to vet a piece of information. I mean, that's the stuff that I think that would be a great blog to write, Steve.
Which one?
The idea of look, while you're communicating to people, let's start to teach people while this pandemic is happening what good information is versus bad, and how to tell the difference.
I've written that blog, but the from many different angles. And,
yes,
but you're right. This is that's the kind of thing you have to keep reminding people over and over again, and sort of rehashing it. I do want to segue to a completely unrelated topic, only because of the time. So last week we talked about projects we were going to do at home, and I said that I was going to bake bread. So I've been working on that all week. I do have to pop down because I have bread in the oven as we speak. I need to check out in a few minutes.
You're baking during the live stream.
What kind of bread, Steve?
All right, so we happen to have two kinds of flour at home. We had wheat flour and all-purpose white flour.
Yeah, no bug flour.
No bug flour.
Cricket flour, right?
No slug flour either.
Yeah.
No cricket flour. So I'm doing the whole, you make a yeast starter. So what you do is you mix a certain percentage of water and flour. You put it in some kind of non-reactive dish, and then you let it sit for a day. And then you constantly feed it with more water and more flour. So like every day you put in a little bit more. Some sites tell you could just build it up, but you could also like take away part of it and then feed it, so the amount is not getting too much. But you keep doing that for a few days until it gets bubbly, right? Like the yeast has proliferated and it's making a lot of air bubbles, and you could see like it's probably doubled in size, and it's very, very bubbly. Then you feed it twice a day for a day or two, and then at some point you just know that it's ready. And again, I have zero experience with this, so I'm just going on what I'm reading. Then you're ready to bake bread with it, right? So you take a piece, then you look up a recipe. You take a certain amount of the starter, and then you mix that with dough, with flour and water, a little bit of salt, a little bit of oil, and then that's it. Then you knead it into shape. You let it rise. You knead it some more. You let it rise some more, and then when it's about doubled in volume and it's ready to go, but not too big. And again, there's different ways you can figure that out, reading different sources. Then you bake it. So the reason why I'm baking right now is I've been doing this all week, and my wheat starter I thought was ready today. My white starter is not ready yet. So I started the process this morning, but it's just taken all day to rise because I'm not using any external yeast. I'm using only yeast from the flour itself.
Right.
But it was nice and bubbly. My starter, I thought my wheat starter was really, really ready. It was all like it's supposed to be. So it's, I let it rise. I probably should have let it rise a little bit more, but I wanted to throw it in before I started the stream. So I threw it in right before the stream. I figured, okay, it was basically 7 hours or 6 hours of rising, which should be, it's in the zone. It should be enough. It looked like about doubled. It's hard to tell. I don't have all the right equipment. Like everyone says, use your digital scale to measure out blah blah blah. I'm like, I don't have a digital scale.
That's a lot of proving.
Yeah, you gotta you can have certain kinds of pans to let the dough sit in to shape it and stuff. But I don't have any of that stuff, so mine's going to be a little bit of a blob, but that's okay. You know how those sourdough loaves are just kind of a blob anyway? Yeah. They're kind of round.
Yeah. But this isn't sourdough.
It is. It's sourdough wheat bread.
Okay.
Yeah.
When can we see this?
In 15 minutes.
Oh, you're gonna. Oh, you'll actually.
Oh, yeah. I'm gonna pop down and take a look at it, and then. But it might be another 10, 15 minutes. Yeah, I'll bring it up and I'll show you guys when it's done. But let me go check on it right now. I'll be back in a minute.
All right.
So my project is. Did you want to go, Bob? I'm sorry.
No, you go first.
I saw that look on your face. I don't want you to be upset tonight.
He's upset.
Too late.
I said that I'm going to build a stone wall, a legit stone wall in my yard. So I don't have anything to show yet because this is going to take a long time because I don't have a ton of free time. But what I'm doing right now,
do a time lapse video.
Yeah, I'll take pictures, and that's what I could do. I got to ask Ian if he could share pictures easily on the live stream. Ian,
send them to me.
I'll do it. So here's what I've discovered, and I don't know if anybody has better information, but when you build a stone wall, you can't just put it on the ground. I'm not doing this to get rid of stones in my yard. I'm doing it actually as a retaining wall, because my driveway, I want to build another parking space, so I want to make a step, right? So I found that you have to put gravel down as drainage underneath, and that has to be dug down probably a good foot into the ground. And then I put a layer of stone, and then I got to put the field stone on top of that. And I'm going to be using mortar to help me build the wall. I'm talking about building a stone wall.
Oh yeah,
but
so the bread is looking good. So probably another 10 minutes, 15 minutes. So I'll bring it up when it's ready. But it's looking good.
So the bottom line is, what I did this week was I collected about 50 stones out of the woods. There's stone walls all throughout the woods behind my house. So I'm grabbing all those stones now. They're staged and they're ready to go. And I have to literally dig out the foundation and put in the stone and lay down the foundation for the stone wall. I don't know. I don't have any of the stone cutting tools yet. I have to order them. I'm probably going to do it on eBay. You need a few different kinds of tools in order to shape the rocks. I need gloves. So, I got to really equip myself. It's going to be
that's a project.
A month-long project.
Yeah, that's a project. Yeah. I'm also just started my garden. I was just preparing the beds. They're all ready to go. So this weekend I'll get the plants to put in there.
You got bunk beds this year?
I have a stepped garden. I have 4 beds. Evan, you're building a raised garden this year.
Yeah,
too.
Raised garden goes up tomorrow morning, 9 a.m.
Yeah.
My friend Rob Sibley says hello to everyone.
Oh yeah, Rob.
Yeah.
Hey, Rob.
From Sandy Hook, from your guys, Bob, your neck of the woods.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Says to say hello, and he's coming over tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. sharp. We're gonna build those things. And pair of 3x6 beds.
Yep.
With lattice for growing stuff that needs to grow nice and tall.
Yeah.
And he made a nice discovery on my property the other day when he was over here specking things out. Yes, it's a mulch pile. A mulch pile that's just been under a layer of kind of low leaves and some grass. But he took a fork to it and he said, wow, this used to be a mulch pile. So I guess the owners of our house, we moved in here about 5 years ago, had a mulch pile, and they were, it was just there hiding in plain sight the whole time. He said, you are so ready to go. It's not even funny.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. I have a mulch pile too. It's awesome because you just take all your clippings and leaves and, yard stuff, and you got to turn it over and keep it, try
moist.
to keep it moist.
Yeah. Plenty of moisture in my bed.
But that soil will end up being great for a garden.
Yeah. He said it's ready to go right now. So looking forward to it. Can't wait for tomorrow.
Yeah. Definitely tell him you said hi. So Rob,
so guys, Mike,
yeah.
So a couple things. Somebody was saying that your mic was a little loud, Steve.
Do I need to turn it down loud or just good loud?
No, they were saying that it was good volume. If anything, Bob, yours is a little quiet.
Yeah, so mine is definitely a little quiet. I did 15 minutes of troubleshooting. I'm not going to fix it right now, so pay attention.
We'll fix it for next week.
So So Tim said, somebody named Tim just said that you guys make me feel lazy. Well, I won't make you feel lazy, Tim. This was my project this week. I said, all right, I want to put something really cool on my desk and spend a couple of days kind of thinking about what I wanted to do. So this is basically a lot of my witch props. So just a crazy assortment of potions and spell books and witch related things that I thought looked pretty cool. Here's one of my favorites. I found this in a store in New Jersey. This is just the coolest thing. It looks like a dead hand, basically like a corpse hand with all these hexes and symbols on it. So I just fell in love with this thing. So
There's a name for that.
It's
called something. I'll look that up.
What? It's
known as something. Yeah.
But then related to that was a skull, which all right. Yeah, I like skulls, but this one was really special. This might be my favorite skull. Look, this one also has all these hexes and interesting things on it. And
it has a gold tooth.
And he's got a funky gold tooth. You'll notice in the back, there's a hole here. Jay, where did this hole come from? 2 years ago, I brought this skull to Jay's house to show Jay, and his son found it. And within, I think, a minute, he broke it, smashed the crap out of it.
I thought I bought you a new one.
The whole back was off. This was in like 30, 40 pieces. So what I decided to do was to turn it into an interesting project. It was a 3D puzzle. And over the course of a week or so, I put all those pieces together and glued them. And it was pretty difficult, but it looks fine. It looks totally fine. You wouldn't even know that this thing was smashed by Jay's son.
You mean the son that was physically abusing me last week on this very live stream?
Yes.
That son?
That's the same one.
I can't find it.
Hey, if any of you guys
Steve,
watching,
you're like this.
Yeah,
you're like this, Steve. This is my collection of hobgoblin brains. But the really interesting thing about this,
they're edible.
Is that if you open it up, you could put your weed in there. Got that going for it.
Okay, we have some questions if we want to take questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so what is the? Oh no, this was one claim. Regarding the doctor's quote unquote claim that our immune systems would be weakened by being at home, or whatever that claim came from.
Mm-hmm.
If we were actually in a truly sterile environment for a few months, would that even be bad for your immune system?
So that's controversial, and it's the idea is that your immune system needs constant working out and stimulation by things in the environment, what we would call antigens, to get a workout so that your immune system stays robust. So yeah, it's plausible that if you really existed in a sterile environment for a long period of time, your immunity would wane because your immune system isn't getting worked out.
So what about astronauts in the space station? What kind of environment are they subject to?
But all right, here's the thing. If you just eat your own boogers, you're fine.
Oh. Hey.
Aren't you basically doing that just by swallowing?
Yeah. Oh, the thing is, it's really hard. Even just the bacteria on our skin, everything. No one is so sterile, or no environment is so sterile that you're not getting a good workout. The idea that being home is weakening your immune system is so absurd.
Yeah, but Steve, who here has eaten their boogers?
And will admit it?
Yeah.
At some point in their life, you mean?
Yes.
Everybody.
You remember it? I watch these kids. Just go to town. Eat,
yeah.
Like this is good stuff. And I have a specific
it's good for
memory.
them.
I have but they don't do stuff because it's good for them. They must enjoy it, right? They have to enjoy it. But it's weird because I have a specific memory of trying that once when I was a kid. I tried it. Yeah. I hated it.
Yeah.
And I never did it again. But I see these kids going back to that well over and over and over. How does that even taste good? Did they put some harissa spice?
It might be hard wiring. Who knows? I mean, if there's an
oh my god, it's so gross
benefit. Yeah, it's pretty disgusting. There's something really vile about it. And it was funny when my kids, Steve said, let them do it. It's actually good for their immune system, and that kind of made me a little more relaxed. But socially, it's absolutely disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's
it tends to be a turnoff.
It's unacceptable. Yeah.
Yeah, so bottom line is we don't know. That's the answer to the question, Steve. We're not sure what would happen to your immune system if you were in a sterile environment.
I mean, it plausibly your immune system, your immunity would wane over time if you were truly sterile. It's but But the thing is, it depends on at what age. The real question is for young children. Like if young children are really in a protected environment, does that increase their risk of developing allergies or whatever? And that there's some evidence to support that. So that's why I said for kids, let them eat dirt, get exposed to as many pathogens as they want. It's probably a good thing. But the empirical evidence is, kind of preliminary. We're not really sure.
All right, next question.
Another question was, what is the reasoning behind the expected second wave in the fall? Is it just the Northern Hemisphere? Is it related to seasonality? I thought that the fact that COVID was around the world meant that it was a sign that it wasn't seasonal.
Yeah, so all right. There could be a little bit of a wane in the warmer months. We don't know that. Coronaviruses do tend to slow down in warmer weather, but you're right. The way it's spreading around the world means maybe that won't happen. So that's an unknown, I would say, at this point in time. But even if there's no inherent seasonality to it, it's just that if we, flatten and then bend the curve, once we're at the downside of the trend, and then we relax social distancing, will the relaxing of social distancing cause a second wave? And so there's a lot of variables there too as well. One is how we relax the lockdown. Do we do it with testing and targeting and tracking and bit by bit and using metrics like the number of cases and reacting to the numbers? If we do it smartly, the idea is to prevent a second wave. But it's also, well, how much immunity resulted from the first wave? And that's also a big unknown. We don't know that right now. We don't know how protective the antibodies are and how many people, really develop antibodies, and if asymptomatic people would get protective antibodies and how long they last. And
what's taken so long though? Hasn't it been long enough to get a sense on how protective those antibodies are?
Yeah.
Right.
No, we don't know yet. We don't yet. So a lot of people are stressing about my bread. My wife is down there monitoring it, so don't worry. She's on top of it.
All right, next question.
But I will check on it in a minute or so.
This one kind of depends on whether or not you've listened to this episode, but it says in the podcast Science Rules with Bill Nye, they heard that Bill said that if an exoplanet had the technology that we have today, they wouldn't be able to see any technological marks on Earth. Is that correct?
And doesn't that depend on a lot of things?
So I'm sorry, we couldn't see technology on Earth from where?
From if an exoplanet had the same technology that we have today, they wouldn't be able to tell.
Depends on the exoplanet, proximity, right?
It depends on their distance. I mean, they could use that transmission spectroscopy, right, to see that there's elements in our atmosphere that
But that's life, not technology necessarily.
Right. Yeah, to see technology.
Well, then yet again, certain pollutions. I mean, certain things in the atmosphere that could potentially be detected.
Mm-hmm.
What about the light we produce on what should be the dark side of the planet? I don't know. Would that be something detectable?
Interesting.
There'd be huge fires. I mean, could they say, "Oh, maybe they're just huge fires"?
Yeah.
Maybe.
I mean, it may be true. It may be true. Yeah, I've thought of that before too. I don't know that I came up with a definitive answer. If there was a world with our exact level of technology 100 light years away, could we detect the civilization? Not just that there's life on that planet, but the civilization from looking at it, not from detecting their. Yeah, eventually you pick up their radio signals and stuff.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Right. What about everything orbiting space junk?
How would they pick that up?
I don't. That's a tough question. I don't know how you would pick that up.
The infrared, or does space junk glow in infrared because of the heat it's absorbing from the planet? I don't know. That's interesting.
If they could infer that we've got tens of thousands of objects, more than that, orbiting the Earth, that's pretty definitive right there. Like, holy, I mean, I guess it could be orbiting debris from a breakup of an asteroid or something. But that would definitely be a clue.
All right, guys, be right back. Keep going.
All right.
Nope, bread time.
All right. Yeah, let's move on to another question that doesn't require Steve.
Okay. Would you rather fight 100 duck-sized? No, never mind. We're not going to do that. We're going to do. This is a food for thought. Okay. It's basically the same thing. Would you rather go to the moon after, say, 1 year of training with only the technology ready to use right now, or would you rather pay $100? I don't know what that means.
Hey, what?
Wait. Would you rather go to the moon with today's technology or get $100?
Basically.
I'd,
Oh, it said pay
Um,
$100. That doesn't make
Oh,
I don't. I mean, I don't see what I would go to the moon if I wasn't so afraid of the space travel end of it. To me that's very claustrophobic and all that stuff. I would love to go to the moon. I mean, the $100 is ridiculous. Like nothing compares to going up in a rocket ship and going to visit our closest neighbor. That would be amazing.
I mean, we don't have the technology built right now to take you to the moon, but I assume they mean our level of technological sophistication.
capability to do it.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, look, I would hope that I would be able to muster the nerve to do something like that, even though I'm pretty sure. Oh boy, I saw it.
We get more frightened as we get older, though, Jay.
All right, fresh out of the oven. It smells
Let's
pretty
take a look.
darn good.
Ooh.
Oh, it looks good.
What do you think? It
Hey.
glows.
It looks like a rear end.
Yeah.
It looks like a brain. Did you do that on purpose?
Well, yeah, you're supposed to cross hatch it at the top, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Are you gonna eat it?
Yeah.
Do
I
it.
think I see the face on Mars. What is that doing there?
Very nice. Smells
this
great.
This is cruel, man.
Yeah, right. Where's my bread?
You could
Steve,
bake your
your
own.
camera-
I just told you how to do it.
Your camera went a little out of focus from all the
Yeah,
movement.
but then
Oh, yeah.
I have to do it.
Do this.
Yep.
Yeah, the old, and you can hold up something with
Is that
writing
better?
in front of you.
Is it just me? Okay, go ahead, Ian.
So we have kind of an AQ6 question, but are there
Good.
any plans to review the TV series Avenue 5?
Yeah, we should. I watched
We
the whole
talked
thing.
about it. That was a good show.
Did we review
It was
it?
fun.
No, we didn't review.
Oh,
it.
we should
think-
review
we
it.
didn't.
We should review it. Yeah.
Okay, we will review that show for you. Whoever.
Speaking
that
of
was.
shows, I was going to ask before.
Shows
have
of shows.
any of you watched Kingdom? It's a Korean show.
Not yet.
It's a Korean show. It's a period Korean show. It's like, I don't know, a couple hundred years ago or something, like medieval Korean.
Yeah.
And it's
Really?
about zombies.
What?
It's really good. It's
Called
really good.
Kingdom.
Kingdom.
How's the makeup?
The zombies are among the most creepy I've ever seen anywhere.
Wow.
That's good.
Wow.
That's
All right,
good.
I'm gonna look that up
I go
right
with that.
now.
I go with
All
that
right,
recommendation.
Fast or slow zombies?
Fast.
They're fast.
They're like fast,
Yeah.
suicidal zombies. Like they'll just leap at you. They're overwhelming. And I love it
Yeah.
like when they stand up, like all their bones crack and their muscles. Oh, it's
Love
like
that sound.
really
Yeah, that
creepy.
crunching, the
Yeah,
bone
yeah.
crunch.
I like it.
Yeah, it looks cool. Oh
Cool.
yeah, that's
Where-
cool.
where-
And
do I find that?
the writing is good too. I think it's on Netflix.
Is it Netflix? Great.
Netflix, yeah. Yeah, it's
I'll
Netflix.
be there. I will be there.
So
Very
you
cool,
guys
yeah.
should watch that. We'll review that
Zombies,
too.
Wonderful.
All right. We got a lot to review.
Oh, I know. It's like
So many good shows out there.
Too many.
Ian. Next question.
I got one.
Go ahead.
AQ6
Earlier-
is in podcast format, although it's hard to keep up with it.
So Les asked earlier, Bob, best guess what happened prior to the Big Bang. So that's a fun question, and my thinking has changed a bit, mainly because of Sean Carroll. I've been reading a lot of Sean Carroll, and so I love his idea of baby universes. So the idea is that a previous universe before our universe went through its life cycle and expanded. Entropy kept rising and rising, and it reached a point where it was basically called de Sitter space, where quintillions of millennia have passed, more, even more than that, and there's really no workable energy. So what happens is that you have a bubble of false vacuum that gets pinched off, and if the energy is just right in that false vacuum, it creates its own universe with matter and energy and radiation, just like we have in our universe. And I like that theory because it really does a lot better dealing with things like the arrow of time and the asymmetry of entropy at the beginning of the universe. It's a great theory. Definitely read some of Sean Carroll's stuff. So this is a great idea, I think. And you could basically have an endless series of these bubble universes that one created the other, There could be all over the place. So it's a
the idea though is that there is an outside of our universe that right?
Sure, yeah. Multiverses is, it's a similar thing, but yeah, there's an outside, but you can never get to it. There's no way you're getting outside of your universe. That you're in that bubble and you're not going anywhere.
Stuck here.
So I think it's really satisfying to think that at the end of our universe, when our universe is basically dead, where there's entropy is at maximum and there's no workable energy and there's no workable work that can be done, and you have these quantum fluctuations that could create this bubble of false vacuum to create another universe. I think it's satisfying to think that it could live on and it's not over. Remember when we used to think that the universe, what was it on Hitchhiker's Guide, a Gnab Gib, the opposite of a Big Bang, when we thought the universe expanded and then collapsed back down. We know that's not going to happen. But that kind of did away with this idea of the universe being reborn. And it was kind of sad when we realized that the universe is expanding and nothing's really going to stop it. So this is another way to have this, this renewal of the universe for, forever. So it's a great idea. It's a really cool theory. I hope it's true.
I just want to throw this out there. I'm reading the comments. Someone's suggesting in Poland that there's a watch party going on. There are dozens of people watching us in Poland. So that's cool. Thank you, Poland. Apparently.
Hi,
that's
Poland.
what the chat says.
Awesome. All right, Ian, next question.
Okay, so let's see. What do we have? Do you have any suggestions how to have a discussion with someone who believes in some conspiracy / pseudoscience that logically doesn't make sense, but you haven't necessarily researched the exact facts?
Well, that's the first thing is you have to be educated on the topic. I mean, what would you say to them if you didn't have any kind of legitimate response on topic? But we've said this many times.
But, yeah, if it's in the moment, like if somebody in the moment is saying, "Hey, what do you think?" They whipping this thing on you. You could tell them, "Hey, I haven't had the time to really explore that issue, so I can't answer for specific factual claims."
Yeah, right.
At this point, all I could do is evaluate for logic, internal consistency, and red flags. But I reserve my judgment until I can explore the specific information. If you can hold off on debating it until you have a chance to do that, it's always much better.
Yeah, no ambush debates, please.
Yeah, getting ambushed with something new is like
unfair tactic.
Yeah, it's not reasonable to expect you to be able to answer questions about something that you haven't had a chance to investigate.
But yeah, what I was going to say was that it's good to talk to people about critical thinking that isn't focusing on the thing that they believe in deeply in their heart. Try to pick a topic that they may agree with you on and teach them some rudimentary critical thinking skills, and it may eventually help them realize that what they're thinking is wrong. It is a long process. It's not a quick fix. There is no quick way, frying pan level, hit them over the head and change people's minds. It takes time. And that's why arguing on the internet is largely a waste of time unless there's other people that are reading it that might be affected by the conversation.
Yeah, one of the listeners points out in the comments, another approach you could take in that situation where you're being asked about something that you haven't had a chance to investigate is to just ask them questions. Like say, "Oh, well, I haven't heard about that. So answer me this. How does this work?" And how does you then try to? That's where you sort of probe for the internal consistency and logic. But all you're not making any claims or statements. You're just asking questions. But that's a legitimate way to approach, that kind of information.
Next one, please.
What advice would you give someone dealing with chronic pain who's reached the point that they're willing to try anything, naturopathy, homeopathy, woo, to find some kind of relief?
So, I would say desperation is not a good motivation for decision making. But I understand the desperation, and certainly the calculus does shift when you do, like, once you've gone through the more and more, safer, established options, evidence-based options, we do move down. So this is that hierarchy of treatment thing that physicians use. Even alternative medicine, I've heard them at least pay lip service to this. It's like, okay, you start with the most established, best evidence-based treatments available. If that doesn't work, then you go to the next, the number 2 treatment, the next one based upon evidence and risk versus benefit, et cetera. And then you keep going. The question is, how far do you go, right? Mm-hmm. That's the question. Do you stop at some point to say, okay, anything below this line is all risk and expense and zero chance of benefit? Or would you keep going all the way without any limit whatsoever, or is there something in between those two extremes? So, my approach is, personally as well as professionally, is that, yeah, there should be a limit. And that limit should be when the plausibility of a treatment approaches zero, or when, obviously you have to combine that to real concerns about the cost, meaning risk of physical harm, or even just the expense or resources. Like, for example, I've reviewed treatments that were not plausible and doesn't have any evidence that they work, that they're not necessarily going to directly harm anybody, but you have to spend literally hours a day, every day, doing the thing, right, that you need to do. So that is a massive investment in time and your resources, and you have to look at how is that going to affect your life. The other thing is there is a huge psychological toll that this can take, and I've seen that happen myself. When people trying something, you're always investing a little bit of hope that it's going to work, and getting disappointed is a little bit of psychological harm, sometimes a lot of psychological harm. The other thing is, especially with pain, is eventually you keep trying things. At some point, you're going to go through a period of time where your pain's not as bad as your baseline for whatever reason, regression to the mean, fluctuation in your symptoms, something changed or whatever. And then whatever pseudoscience you were trying at that point in time is going to get the credit. And now you're a believer in pseudoscience, in something that didn't actually work.
So dangerous.
Yeah. So then you're a victim. That you are now vulnerable to the con artists, to the whole world that's out there to exploit you for that. So don't think it's benign. There has to be some rational limit on how far you would go. But having said that, I would also say that's not the same thing as giving up. And it's like I tell my patients, like I don't necessarily have the answer, but I won't give up. I'll keep trying. I won't. Sometimes physicians say, I've tried everything I know how to try. I have nothing left to offer you. Go see somebody else. Okay, that's not unreasonable. Or I will tell them, I think it's fine for you to explore other specialists who may have other, areas of expertise that may be helpful here. But as long as you want me to keep trying, I will keep trying. There's always things you can do. But I always stick within the realm of science-based medicine, which can involve compassionate use of experimental treatments or things that are speculative. But you got to look at the totality of risk versus harm, risk versus benefit, and make a rational decision.
Steve, can you please eat the bread now?
Well, I'm going to have that with my family for dinner.
Wait. Excuse me.
Can you say the blessing for the bread before you eat it?
We patiently waited for this thing to finish.
You want me to cut it open and taste it?
Yeah, but you got to say the bracha.
All right. Part of the...
I'll be back with a bread knife. Hang on.
Okay.
All right. Yeah,
ahead,
we're
Ian.
gonna have a ceremony.
Okay. So here's a non-COVID live stream question. What is the most surprising thing you noticed about the skills / knowledge / capabilities of your kids? This person has a 4-year-old, and they're a 3-language household, and the kid blew them away by counting to 10 in 2 languages, as taught by his mom.
That's an interesting question. I mean, I am blown away by my son, who's 7 years old, is talented with music. And it's cool for me to see him, just kind of innately being able to understand the complexity of music. He was able to recognize pitch at 3 years old and mimic me singing, which was really cool. And he just has a fantastic ear. And he's also like, when he's farting around on the piano, it doesn't sound like it did when I was a kid farting around on the piano. Like he actually is doing things that are good. He's making good choices, which I find to be fascinating. Like, where is that coming from? Like what?
Mother.
Somebody, right? Somehow. Here we go. And begin.
All right, this is the big test because
Right.
you want to see what it looks like on the inside. It should be nice and airy.
I want to see what Bob looks like on the inside.
All right, I'm just going to cut down the middle.
Airy, isn't it? What'd you expect?
Harry Potter.
Speaking of Harry Potter,
Thanks, Ev. Now I'm going to say that for the next week.
You better.
That's pretty good.
Nice.
Hey, look at that bread. Look at that wand.
Okay.
speaking of Harry Potter, what is this wand from? What does this wand make you think of?
The Harry.
It's a vine. It's definitely a like a thorn bush, roses or something.
Who wielded this? Who would wield this wand in Harry Potter? I'm asking
Bellatrix.
all the people watching.
Yeah, I would say Bellatrix. Or what about what's her face? Who was the girl?
I got Malfoy's wand back here, by the way. It's this little, little black. I don't know if you can see it.
Who was the? Yeah.
Box there? It's holding
Yes, I see the
Malfoy's
box.
wand. Yes.
What was her name? She was the girl that had that maggot. She believed in very strange animals.
Who's this? Oh, Lovegood.
Very strange
yeah.
animals indeed.
Lovely. Yeah. It's not
I have to
hers.
get my wand.
Luna Lovegood. This
Yes.
is one of the Weasley twins. I
That's a
forget
good
which one.
character. Let's see what I
It's a
got.
nice one.
So to answer the question, this is a Death Eater wand. I don't know who wielded it, but I think it's a kind of a generic Death Eater wand. That would be imagine this- that'd make a scary weapon just by itself.
All right. Well, we will take another question.
Well, this is a family question and more. First off, they wanted you guys to order yourselves by age, which I know you've done before, but you want to do that. And they also want to know how Mama Novella is doing.
So Bob, among us, Bob is the oldest. That's a nice wand.
Thank you.
That's Malfoy's wand.
Draco Malfoy.
It's
Yep.
very like it looks like very like a bookworm type of wand. You know what I mean?
Jay, here's my
Yeah.
favorite wand. So this is a wand. It's not a Harry Potter wand. It's just a prop wand that I bought, and I painted it to make it look more realistic. Here, the original color was just dark, so I made it look more like wood. And
Nice.
luckily, it had this beautiful wood grain. So a little dry brushing really brought out the wood grain. But to me, if a witch is going to wield a wand, this is kind of like the wand a witch would wield. Not a nice straight one, but something that's a little bit crooked and ornery. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Is it the wicked wand a witch would wield?
So how is it, Steve?
Would she wield it well? It's good. It's very good.
What did you put on it? Hummus?
A little butter.
Well, I mean,
Peanut
anything
butter,
tastes good
baby.
with butter on it. All right. So Bob is the oldest, then Steve, then me. Now, my question
me.
to the audience
Evan.
is what age do you think each of us is? Yeah. Well, I thought they were just talking about the three of you. So, Evan, where do you fit in? Don't say your age, but where do you fit in between all of us?
At the end, I'm the youngest.
Evan's the youngest. Okay.
Or at least,
Other than Kara.
depending how
Yeah.
you
And
look at
Kara's
it.
the ultimate.
Right.
youngest.
Kara.
I've been around on this planet the least of the four of us.
You've been off-world part of the time?
Oh yeah.
So Steve is like 13 months younger than I am.
Mm-hmm.
Jay is what, 5 years younger
Mhm.
than I am?
Yeah.
And Evan, you just turned 50.
I turned 50 in 2019. I did.
Yep.
Yep.
All right. Next question.
I got one. People are like, wait, Bob's the oldest?
He loves that, Steve.
James Inhall got
That's
it
not a
correct.
question.
Good
James
job,
is
Tim
correct.
Smith. Yes, 50.
So we had a question from Juan. He said, this is astrophysics again, so haha. He said heat death, vacuum decay, big crunch, or big rip. If you have to pick one, which do you choose?
Jay chooses the big rip.
So
I can tell you right now.
Yes, I do.
So heat death is where our universe is heading now, where it's going to expand. Entropy is going to reach maximum, and it's going to be just like one temperature throughout the entire universe. You can't do anything. No life could exist. That's very far in the future. Vacuum decay means that the vacuum state that we exist in now is going to decay into a lower energy state. That's not good, because if that happened, then the entire universe would convert, I think at the speed of light, to that lower energy state, and it would basically wipe out everything in the known universe. So that would not be fun. I don't choose that one. The big crunch is the universe expanding and then the mass pulling it back into a big crunch. That's not going to happen. But that would be, like I said, that would be okay, because I think the universe would rebound and create itself anew. The big rip is really scary. That we thought that might happen at some point, where the universe is expanding so fast and accelerating so fast that eventually the atoms of your body would be ripped apart. So everything from the earth to your bodies would be just blown apart at some indefinite time in the future, far in the future, but still pretty scary. I would pick a big crunch. I think would be fun, because then everything would come back together, and it would be a long time in the future. A heat death is also good, because it's a lot of time. We'd have plenty of time, to.
I'm a fan of the big pause. You need about 10 billion year pause to stop expansion, and then it can resume after.
Oh, I see what you
Kinda-
mean. Not a
like
freezing of time, but
Kind of
just
like a pandemic.
The vacuum
The
decay is the
universe is
worst, because like just boom, you're over. Existence is over.
You're right, Steve. And
kinda
that
harsh.
that could be approaching us right now at the speed of light. This vacuum decay, this lower energy state of the universe that would just wipe everything out. It could be one day it could hit us, and that's it. Game
And
over.
we'll never know.
We'll never know.
Like that gamma ray burst you've been dying to see
Jesus
forever,
Christ.
Bob. That'd be the
Right.
last thing you see.
Jay, they don't. That's probably not going to happen. Don't worry about it.
Why talk about shit like that? Like, why don't we?
To get your anxiety.
Talk
All
about
right,
it.
can we have a question that is terrestrially based, please?
Sure. Can y'all possibly discuss the intersections between income inequality and increasing prevalence of pseudoscience, or maybe if that exists?
And the income inequality and the prevalence of pseudoscience. That's interesting. I've never thought about that. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Is there a correlation? I don't know that there is. I have no data on that. I'd have to. That would be a question I have to look into. Is there a correlation? And even if there's a correlation, what do we know about any causation? Is there any way we can infer causation?
Yeah. We have to look at studies.
Just because both are increasing at the same time doesn't tell you much. You need to see multiple correlations.
All right, next question.
Are there any good tests or ways to hone your skeptical skills?
Yes, reading.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. Giving your brain a continuous flow of skeptical literature. Our book is a good starting point. The Demon Haunted World is another starting point. I think there's some very good classes on the great courses as a starting point. But then you want to get into a cycle where you're analyzing things that come up all the time and exercising your skeptical chops, and then try to look up and find the right answers and hone it from there. It is a process. It takes quite a while to fill your head with the baseline. But then once you do, it comes easier and things move much faster. Hi.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you ask for another question. How would you convince someone that scientific consensus is relevant?
So you have to ask, what is this? What is a scientific consensus? What is it? Right?
Yes, what is it?
It is. So first of all, the science itself, like the discipline, like physics, whatever, has to be legitimate. It has to be a field that is based upon legitimate scientific methodology, has an actual body of knowledge, has institutionalized, procedures and whatever. Right? Like I would argue that naturopathy is not legitimate. And so I don't give a crap about the consensus of naturopathic opinion about anything. But yeah, physics, sure. Evolutionary biology, absolutely. So once you decide that the topic is legitimate, the institutions are legitimate, then, well, how does a consensus arise? Consensus is built upon evidence, right? It's just saying that, when an expert thinks that this is the answer to a question, how did they come by that? They came by looking at the totality of evidence. If multiple experts come to the same conclusion, looking at all of the evidence, then that tells you that conclusion is more solid, right? It's not as much opinion or speculation if everyone is coming to the same conclusion. But not all consenses or whatever are equal, because you could say, yes, 100% of experts agree. We have no idea what the answer is, right? I mean, so the question is, how confident are they in the answer? So, like, for example, at some point in time, like the IPCC said
We're experiencing a hijacking.
Oh my God.
Sorry, Steve.
Olivia, hi.
All right. While we're being interrupted, come over here, Dylan. My son would like to say something to everybody that's viewing this live stream. Come on, Dylan.
Olivia.
Do it. Okay, I don't think he's gonna do it. He had something that he wanted to say.
Hi, Olivia.
You're talking to this microphone.
Uncle Bob.
Sounds good.
Uncle Bob. Uncle Bob.
Wow.
Bob's favorite song.
I gotta finish up. I'll be right down, guys.
Wait, keep her around.
I'll be right there.
Aw.
Go on.
Jay. That
God.
made my fucking day, man.
Bob, that was really special, man.
Special sauce.
Yeah, so my son tells my wife about 3 hours ago that he still feels bad over what he did last week. And he wants to come on and apologize to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, wow, that's awesome, Dylan. Yeah, it was really good. I mean, he caught me. I was like, I didn't know what to do last week when he was like kind of overreacting. And I'm like, I'm like trying to give him some hand signals, like, chill out, don't do this, whatever. But then when I explained to him later, I'm like, I was working and I had a lot of people watching me, and, you shouldn't do things like that. And, I'm trying to speak rationally to an inherently irrational brain. But he did on his own take the time to think about it, because I didn't knock him over the head with it. I explained to him why I was frustrated with what he did. And he told my wife that he wanted to come on and apologize. Now, he just chickened out because, of course, he's scared.
Apology accepted.
Yeah, but it's those moments that make me believe in humanity, when so many things take away or strip your belief. Like, having him want to apologize and make a difference really means a lot to me.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
Hope for the
continue.
future.
Sorry.
Now, the final point I was making was that, like the IPCC at one point said that, the consensus is that global warming is happening, and we're about 90% sure that it is, right? So they included the error bars, right? How certain they were. They then upgraded that to 95% when the evidence got better. So what are the experts saying? First of all, how strong is the consensus itself, and is the conclusion, how confident are they in the conclusion itself? And so that the bottom line is a consensus is built upon scientific evidence. Mm-hmm. And so it's not just opinion. It's not like a vote or whatever. It's not a popularity contest. It should accurately reflect the degree of the evidence itself. The reason why it's important is because as a non-expert, you have no effing idea. And if you think you do, you are that's Dunning-Kruger all over. You have no idea. If you try reading a really hardcore technical paper in an area that you do not have technical expertise, it's gibberish. You cannot make sense of it.
Complex. it's so impressive and intimidating.
I can give
go
you
through them.
a real
It's a
world
language unto its
example.
And
I-
Jay, also remember, Jay, I mean, I read about astronomy and astrophysics all the time. I read some of these papers and I'm like, these guys are so smart and knowledgeable. Oh my God, I know nothing. It's
Right.
Yeah.
amazing.
So when I was learning how to code, I remember in the beginning, I felt like I was reading a foreign language and it was so difficult to dig down. And fast forward a decade, I found notes that I had taken along with some. I was like, I bought books and I'm teaching myself, and I was about to throw this thing away. I opened it up and I'm like, oh, I remember having a problem with this, and I read it and it made perfect sense to me. And I remember very exquisitely what it felt like to look at that and feel completely out of my depth. And that, not to say that I became an expert in coding, I didn't, but the idea here is that you don't know what you don't know to such a horrific level that you can't judge. And you really need to, and this is the thing I was saying before, we have to respect and honor experts in the field. And we have to give them, we have to empower them to inform us.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Yeah, you have to realize that whatever you think you understand about any advanced science is a popularized version of what the scientists know, right? It's not that it's dumbed down, but it's, you're understanding it at a certain level. And it's, the scientists who know what they're talking about are translating their understanding to a level that is understandable to somebody without a deep level of technical expertise. But it's always an approximation of what's actually known. Right. And at some level, like if a scientist says, oh, yeah, based upon examination of whatever the fossil evidence, we think A evolved into B. Well, why do you think that? It's like, OK, give me 2 fucking years of your life and I will explain to you why we think that. And so that's what it's like. It's because of, the details, really fine details of the evidence. And it's really complicated. You have to be a deep level expert in something to even understand how deep expertise goes. Yeah. And by reflection, how shallow your knowledge really is, and how much there is that you don't know.
Yep.
All right. Well, it is 6:20. I think that we covered a lot of topics this week, and I thought I'm really enjoying these discussions that we're having. I noticed that, in the live stream, we get to actually talk about more off-topic things than we ever do during the podcast. Yeah, and it's fun. It's a lot of fun for us. But we really do appreciate you guys tuning in, and we also really do appreciate it. I do notice that after we do the live streams that some people become patrons, and to all of you who have been doing that, we really do appreciate it. That's what keeps us going. And it does enable us to continue to put out the show and make all the content that we do. So, guys, thank you very much to those of you who do become patrons, and thank you to everyone who came to this live stream. Again, there's no end in sight. We're going to continue doing this every Friday night at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time until the world gets better. So
we are reading your comments. We are reading what you are typing. We can't respond to everything, obviously, but we are reading them. Promise you that.
We had one
daylight time.
We had one final question. Will there be a Nexus 2021?
Why,
yes, the Nexus 2021 is all right. So Nexus 2020, if you go to nexus.org, necss.org, you can sign up to join us for the live stream Nexus that we're going to have. We're going to be doing it in the SGU studio, and we're going to be calling in people from around the world. That conference is all going to be, you can watch the entire thing from your home, and any money that you had spent buying the tickets to join us on that live stream, you can apply to Nexus 2021. Nexus 2021 will be held in a hotel in Atlantic City. All of the details are going to be put online soon, and you could be pre-purchasing tickets for that hopefully within the next few weeks. The hotel is gorgeous. It's going to be our best conference that we've ever had, and we're already building the conference right now. So we're over a year away, and we're already building it. We're super excited about it, but I don't want to spill any details until it hits critical mass, and then we'll hit you with all the data.
All right, thanks for joining me, guys. Thanks
Thank
to
you,
everyone
and
out there.
thanks,
Stay
guys.
safe.
Next week, guys.
Thank you. Wash
Next
your hands.
week.
Wash your hands, everyone.
Thanks, Ian.
Thanks, Tech
Thanks,
Overlord.
Ian. Bye.
Skeptic's Guide to the Universe is produced by SGU Productions, dedicated to promoting science and critical thinking. For more information, visit us at theskepticsguide.org. Send your questions to info@theskepticsguide.org. And if you would like to support the show and all the work that we do, go to patreon.com/skepticsguide and consider becoming a patron and becoming part of the SGU community. Our listeners and supporters are what make SGU possible.